Oh, hey there. I'm going to start this off with a statement that might be a little too harsh, but I'm going to say it anyway. Version exclusive features are completely anti-consumer, and they only exist in hopes that people are stupid enough to buy both versions of a game, that way they can experience 100% of it. And yes, it's me. I'm people. I was recently playing through Yacht Club Games' most recent title, Cyber Shadow. I got it on the PS5, which also comes with a PS4 version. I was pretty excited about this because it means I can get trophies twice now. Usually when a game comes out and it's a multi-console release, I always go for the Sony titles because I'm a huge sucker for trophies. However, when speaking to a friend of mine who got the Switch version, he sent me this picture. Amiibo? God damn it, it's Shovel Knight all over again! That's right, today's video is about version exclusive features. It's almost like console exclusivity, but somehow worse. So what exactly is version exclusivity? Well, it's pretty simple. It's when a developer decides to release a game on multiple consoles, but puts in different features depending on the version. I mentioned Shovel Knight because it is a prime example of this. Now let me tell you, I adore Shovel Knight. I think it's a fantastic game with perfectly responsive controls, an awesome soundtrack, and memorable visuals. But it also has some of the most ridiculous exclusive content depending on the platform you play it on. I'm not talking about console exclusive features that have to be included like trophies and cloud saves, etc. I mean each version has dramatic gameplay differences, making them all stand apart from one another. For the Sony version of Shovel Knight, there was a special Kratos boss fight, complete with a unique song. When you beat Kratos, you're given the Gravedigger's shovel, which can be used to make the Armor of Chaos. This dramatically changes Shovel Knight's playstyle, allowing you to do multi-hit attacks much like Kratos. Sometimes killing enemies will allow Shovel Knight to absorb their essence and shoot a projectile with his next attack. This form absolutely tears through enemies and bosses alike and is a lot of fun to play, but you know, it's exclusive to players who have it on the PlayStation of some sort. The Microsoft version has the Battletoads. This takes place in the mysterious area, pitting Shovel Knight against Rash, Zitz, and Pimple. The areas you traverse are reminiscent of levels from Battletoads on the NES, and overall it's pretty impressive. Because their side quest is so much longer, it gets 5 additional music tracks as well. Upon completing the quest, you get an item to make the Toad armor, turning Shovel Knight green, giving him punch attacks, but more importantly, the ability to run, which to me is huge. The fact that Yacht Club Games decided to lock running behind version exclusivity is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I do not understand that choice, but it is exactly what happened. Lastly, there are the various Nintendo versions, which come with what is arguably the most dramatic gameplay change, Custom Night. Going over every single gameplay change that Custom Night brings to the table would take an entire video in its own right, but I'll sum it up as quickly as possible. First of all, Custom Night is only accessible if you own the Shovel Knight amiibo, which is outlandish to me, because at some point in time, those amiibos will become damn near impossible to find, completely locking future Nintendo players out of this content, so that's cool. But when you scan it in, you'll open up Custom Night. He starts off feeling somewhat similar to Shovel Knight, but all the money you gain is basically converted into experience points, allowing him to level up. Level ups come with new abilities, each one being randomly assigned, as well as a new palette in a set order. There are 52 palette choices. Every 5 levels, you get more health and magic. As for his relics, he gets 21 in all, 12 of which are Shovel Knights, 2 are from Plague Knight, and 7 are brand new relics. Custom Knight also gets passive abilities such as a double jump, a glide, and running. That's right, if you are playing any of the PlayStation versions, you are the only people who do not get the ability to run in any form. What in the absolute Yacht Club? Whose decision was that? Whose idea was that? I think your game is great, but holy shit, that was a weird move. You can also make other changes like giving yourself bulkier armor or a fish head. With the various combinations between outfits and palettes, you can have access to over 200 different looks for Custom Night. And that's the thing, I think Custom Night is great. He's a ton of fun to play, but I think it's absolutely atrocious that only Nintendo players get access to what is essentially an entirely new character. That, at the end of the day, people who have a PlayStation just don't get to have Shovel Knight move any faster than a brisk walk for the entire game. Unless, of course, you buy multiple versions of a game that you already own just to experience all the features. Version-exclusive features do nothing for the consumer, but do everything for the developer, as well as adding more fuel to the already stupid console war fire by having people argue about which versions they should be getting. Side note, console wars are incredibly stupid. Buy what you want, play what you want, but the moment you attack somebody else for enjoying console of their choice, it makes you look incredibly insecure about your own purchase. When I first purchased Shovel Knight, I did so when it released on the 3DS. As the game progressed through development and a physical copy came out, I had a choice to make on if I wanted to buy it for the Wii U or the PS4. I went for the Wii U at the time, due in part to the amiibo functionality. Later on, I ended up with a PS4 copy as well, because, you know, trophies. At the time, I told myself I really wanted to support Yacht Club because I really do love this game a lot. But it's also hard to not be a bit miffed when you realize that the majority of people aren't like me. They're not going to buy multiple versions, so they're going to be missing out on good content because of the version-exclusive features. It's really hard for me to view this as a way that isn't trying to purely convince consumers to buy multiple versions of a game. On the one hand, I've always appreciated the free DLC that was slowly included with Shovel Knight, being Plague, Specter, and King Knight modes. These are like entire games in their own right. But on the other hand, that's all kind of moot when I ended up buying the game multiple times just to be able to enjoy the version-exclusive features. And yeah, ultimately that was my choice. Nobody was forcing me to do that. But it's hard to now look at it and wonder if this was Yacht Club's plan all along. Shovel Knight is not the only game that's had version-exclusive features. The first time I can remember seeing it was back in school with Mortal Kombat Trilogy. There was a kid that I went to school with that got it on the N64. Meanwhile, I got it on the PlayStation. And it wasn't hard to see that these were two radically different games. There's a lot of differences here, such as the PS1 version having more characters, but that was mainly due in part to the N64's cartridge limitations. The N64 had some pros as well, but these types of changes back then were more understandable because they were working with such radically different hardware. Fighting games are still riddled with this kind of thing, which can ultimately make trying to run tournaments a nightmare. The easiest workaround being to ban exclusive characters, so you don't end up in a situation where you have player A using Sony's exclusive character going up against player B using Microsoft's exclusive character. Like, it literally can't happen. So for a tournament setting, these characters just can't be picked, which is a shame to those who enjoy them. And then you have Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and this is a mess. The game was originally released on the PlayStation, and it's the version that everybody's the most familiar with. A year later, it was released on the Sega Saturn in Japan exclusively. This was supposed to be the enhanced version of the game, as it had a lot more features, but it was also just riddled with bugs. The load times are really slow, and the Saturn's hardware being so different from the PlayStation led to a lot of areas having to be chopped up into screens, as well as a lot of graphical issues. But it had two entirely new areas, complete with their own unique music. 4 if you counted their inverted castle counterparts. It also had playable Richter at the start of the game, using an updated sprite that was more attuned with his art, as well as a playable Maria. This was even more confusing for me as a kid, because I would see pictures in magazines and wonder why I couldn't play Maria in my game, not realizing that this was a Saturn version as well as a Japan exclusive. But it gets worse, because later on the game would be ported and bundled into the Dracula X Chronicles on PSP with an updated script and voice acting, as well as a completely different playable Maria. That's right, the Maria from the Saturn version and the PSP version play entirely different from one another. This version would later be ported again to the Castlevania Requiem pack. So the version from Requiem is actually the PSP version of the game, but they didn't even bother to fix the controls. So the key bindings for the transformations assume you only have 2 shoulder buttons as opposed to 4. The issue here is that this was Konami's chance to actually make a truly definitive version of this game. They could have given us a complete version of Symphony of the Night with the amazing visuals of the PlayStation and the new areas from the Sega Saturn, with a choice between which Richter sprite you wanted to use, or which version of Maria you wanted to play as, or even choosing between which voice acting track you wanted to use. But they didn't, and they won't. So if you want to enjoy the full content, you have to track down and buy multiple versions of this game just to get the full experience. Then we have version exclusivity going so far as to proclaim that one version of the game is the definitive version, and then for it to not be later on. And for that example, I will point you to Dragon Quest XI. Overall, this is an absolutely great game, but much like Symphony of the Night, it was also handled like an absolute mess. Upon its announcement, it was to receive 2 versions, the PlayStation 4 version and the Nintendo 3DS version. They were radically different, the PS4 being gorgeous and in HD, and the 3DS using the more clunky, chibi style models similar to the other 3DS Dragon Quest titles, like the remake of 7. But there was a twist, because the bottom screen would show the game in 16-bit sprite form. They went on to make 3 different versions of Dragon Quest XI in 3 different styles. When this was announced, I was pretty excited because I thought it was such a cool concept, and I was committed to buying both the PS4 and the 3DS version. But then the 3DS version got added to the numerous Dragon Quest titles that have never and will never see their way outside of Japan. In the US, we only got the PlayStation 4 version, but even that was different from Japan's, because in Japan, they didn't have any voice acting, but they had a fully orchestral soundtrack, whereas in the US, we had a fully voice acted game, but all the music was done in MIDI format. So while I was sad that I didn't get to experience the 3DS version, I still really enjoyed the PlayStation 4 version, going as far to platinum it. It honestly became one of my favorite games of 2018. Then Tokyo Game Show 2018. A mere 15 days after the release of Dragon Quest XI in the West, they unveiled Dragon Quest XI S Definitive Edition for the Switch. This version would have all of the features of the Japanese and English versions, additional quests, more story and plot for various characters, and it included the ability to play the entire game in the 16-bit mode from the 3DS version. So basically, while playing my version of the game, I'm stuck knowing that a much better and more complete version is coming out exclusive to the Switch. Except that wasn't the case either, because at TGS 2020, they announced that the Definitive S Edition would be coming out to all platforms, PS4 included. And for some reason, they decided to keep the S on there, which is really confusing to me because I assumed that the S stood for Switch, but now I don't know. But the thing is, even this version is still technically different than the base PS4 version. Why? Because it's just a port of the Switch version, so technically, graphically, it's different. The Switch being a less powerful console, but also used a different version of Unreal Engine 4, so I don't think it's necessarily worse graphically, it's just different. And ultimately, unless you're playing them side by side and really looking for details, you probably won't notice anyway. I don't mind when games are released on multiple platforms. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't even mind when they use the platform's exclusive features, such as if I'm playing on the PS5, I can get cloud saves and trophies, and if I'm playing a game on the Switch, I can lay in my bed and play it portably. That's fine. It's when there are entire gameplay elements that are lost out on between the versions that gets me. Now then, since you've sat through this video on YouTube, you should go watch my slightly altered versions on Vimeo, Facebook, and Pornhub, each one with exclusive content for the website. Side note. Fuck. I can get through this. It's just hard because I'm trying to go so fast with it.
Side note.
Side note.
Side note.